Hello, and welcome to another episode of Collaborators on the official Odom's Library YouTube channel. My name is c.b.strul, and I'll be your host again. This is the series where I speak with friends, artists, people that I've collaborated with in the past in all sorts of genres, and just, we basically shoot the shit, and we see how we feel about the projects that we worked on. We talk about new things. It's pretty exciting. I don't know if you watched the previous episode of this, I spoke with a good friend of mine named Z, who is a great director. And he had mentioned a few times on the program that he felt like we were not connecting necessarily in the way that he would like, because he wanted to be in the same room. And I agree with him, and hopefully we'll do another episode in the future with him where we can be in the same space. That's part of why we don't have video at the moment, is with our next collaborator. I wanted to make sure that we were together in the same space, and we kind of threw it together at the last minute, but I'm really excited about how this is going to go because we've been friends for a very long time. We've worked on a few things together. So this collaborator is John Andrew Myers. He is the author of the Mere Mortals series of books. Hi, John. How's it going?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. Also,
thank you for the intro.
Of course. Also in the room is Madison, my wife.
Hi.
So, John, I wanted to start out by bringing up our history as collaborators. What we remember about it, how we felt about the experience. We had 3 specific collaborations that I can remember artistically. So I don't know if we can go through them one by one. So the first one that I remember that I think we really got a kick out of was we tried starting a band together.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It was like a punk band, right?
If you say so. I don't remember enough. I think punk spirit was in there at least.
Yeah, and I think you finally put some of those songs out.
One of them, yes, has been released under a different name.
Okay.
It's not that hard to put songs on Spotify.
Absolutely, yeah. What's the name of that song?
That'll be discussed at another time. That'll be promoted in another way.
Oh, okay.
There's a little bit of a distancing, you might say.
Oh, really? Okay.
Removal, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we haven't talked about that, but.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I don't take any ownership of that song. So if that's something that.
No, not in that way. No. I just, if I'm here today, as the writer.
Oh.
Then I'm less so here today as that.
So that's interesting, and that's that's part of the throwing it together and not knowing exactly what we're going to do. We can always cut around that too if we really want to. But
no, it's fine. I mean, I have no qualms admitting that. But yeah, one of the things I've learned is to create kind of a separation.
Okay.
And there is a reason why stage names are a thing and pen names are a thing, and they have a purpose.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, pretty exciting thing to keep in mind.
I mean, would you consider that a collaboration with yourself?
Yes, if that's then of course.
Okay, so then let's get away from that one. So at one point in time, we had been working on a screenplay together, and I remember personally the experience of working on that screenplay was that something that I had never done before in that way was we had planned everything out ahead of time, had a bunch of cards. We each took half of the cards, and we wrote those scenes ourselves. So everything for me personally was kind of disjointed.
Right.
Yeah. How did you feel about that process?
I mean, yeah, the same. I'd forgotten that was the way we tried to go about it. It almost seemed like at the time you and I had both tried to write with a bunch of different people, and with that particular script at that time, it seemed like we were just kind of trying something new. Like we were like, hey, maybe this could be a cool way to go about developing a screenplay together. It seemed like that was kind of the what I remember.
Absolutely, because it's not a way that I've ever worked on a project before. And so that, like, I think that would be interesting for our audience to hear about a little bit, because I don't normally write in that fashion. When I'm writing, I have my big beats and I have a train of thought that I try to flow through, and it's like those big moments really drive me towards the next thing until I go through the editing process.
Yeah.
If I have everything too planned out, then it loses some of its luster for me.
Oh yeah.
But like I feel like how do you normally go through your process then?
I don't think I have a normally. I feel like everything I've ever done has been kind of done a little bit differently. You know, I try to have sort of a, you know, I do like outlining quite a bit. But, you know, one of the joys of writing is when you're suddenly exploring something new that you weren't expecting to write. So kind of, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, I think. I can't think of any two projects that were done the same, you know, even just in the fact that I was in different spaces physically, not just mentally, but physically, because so much about creation is about, or you know, just making anything or being creative is about where you are and your space that you're in. And I've been moving so much, you know, for most of my adult life, that there was never a chance for any two projects to ever kind of be the same in that way.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I mean, you know, and I think that leads to a very interesting little bit of conversation, is what it's like living a busy life outside of writing and trying to still write.
Right.
You know, like, I know you've had a bunch of jobs and you've moved a lot, as you've said, and you've had to go travel a bit when you didn't expect to. That's affected some of your projects. What was that like for you, you know?
It's not what I would want, you know, it's not the preferred thing. I would have loved to have some stability, because there's something to be said for lack of a better word, like trauma or just movement in life, be it good or bad. There's something to be said for what that can do for creativity. It can kind of give you the ammo or the, you know, the juice for creativity. But then the actual creation itself, the creating the thing, whatever it is, I feel like you need kind of stability around you for that. You know, like a lot of the great works that we have, whether they be paintings or written works or whatever, I very rarely hear that they were done on the battlefield, or, you know, they were done during the thing. They're usually made at some point after. And so there's something to be said for kind of living, you know, with a sense of turmoil and no chance to, you know, put your feet on the ground or anything like that. There's something to be said for what that can do for creativity. But then as far as like the act of creating itself, having a good space really helps with that. So yeah, it's probably not the way I would have liked things to be. And I'm hoping that, you know, now things can sort of settle down a bit, you know, and have more of a settled place to work. I
feel like I see, because we happen to be in John's new, like, what would you call the space?
I'm calling it my rec room for right now.
It's a rec room.
Yeah.
And I can feel like the obvious vibes that this is going to be, you have the space you actually need to be able to work on your projects without having to break it up. I feel like that's a pretty cool thing. I've never had it in that way. So I'm very excited for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I also like, there's something to be said about living those experiences. There's no reason to be writing about anything if you haven't experienced something in your life. Like at a certain point, you have to be doing it. At a certain point, you can't just be making everything up. So, like, it's important to go through those kind of issues here and there. Yeah, live your life. So, okay. Before we get to our third collaboration, then. I think that maybe this is a better time than towards the end to kind of introduce your current work, your big project at the moment that you've been doing, your novels. Yeah, tell us a little bit about them.
I am writing a dark fantasy series called Mere Mortals, and it is a planned six-part series at the moment. And it tells the tale of two men who die on the same night and are brought back and ordered, one by heaven and one by hell, to go catch this runaway demon. The villain in my book, the first one, is sort of like if the demon from The Exorcist decided, I'm not going to possess this little girl, I'm going to possess Michael Myers. So just this giant dude that, you know, wanted to be possessed. And that's kind of the villain in my first one. But it's a dark, gritty series with a dry sense of humor, but it also doesn't take itself very seriously, and it is just sort of a fun adventure. And I've been writing it for most of my life. It's hard to define when I started it. As of now, I'm saying 25 years, because that's kind of when it started to take a shape of what it sort of looks like now, even though I've kind of been working on it for longer than that.
Yeah. Projects like that, they have to grow over time.
Very much so, yeah.
And remind people how old you are currently.
I'm 37.
So that is a good chunk of your span.
But I'll be 38 next month.
Pew, pew, pew.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, no, it literally is most of my life, and I've begun calling it my life's work at this point.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It's super cool. I've read the first two, which the second one came out, had the same book birthday as my second book, Connectivity. Yeah, which was pretty neat. I think we were both very proud about that.
That was fun.
Yeah, those books are really good, and I highly recommend that you read them if you have not already.
And look forward to more.
Look forward to more. Yeah. Are you currently in the act of working on one, or?
Yes. Yeah. The third one is currently being worked on.
Excellent.
I have it right here.
Oh my goodness.
This is basically it.
So cool.
Yeah.
Wow. That thing's already a tome. It's humongous.
They're stupid big. It's dumb.
What's the page count on each of them?
The first one was like 630 something, and then the second one I think is right around 700.
636 pages, 37 pages, 700 pages. Yeah,
Blessed to have a lot of words. You know, it's good.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. Like I keep saying it, and I believe it deep down. I didn't plan it that way.
The story needed it.
Yeah, it honestly, and it was weird to me that the two of them were actually so close in size. I was expecting them to not be the same, but then by the time I was done finishing the second one, they were almost the same size book. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah.
I feel like it says something about the way your mind works, that the size of the scope of a story as you're telling it winds up like,
or just the pacing that I go for naturally or something. I don't know, but like it did make me feel more like, you know, when I did the second one and it was almost the same length and it was unintentional on my part, for some reason that made me feel good. I don't know why, but it kind of did. It gave me some sort of solace, and I can't tell you why.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing to have a book that size, like in your hand.
I guess so. This sounds so dumb. I really never thought about that. I really didn't, because like I have spoken with just as many people, if not more, that get turned off by how big a book is than by people that are into how big a book is. You know, I do not see it as or at least yet, I haven't seen it as a benefit to have that big of a book.
You know, this is interesting. I kind of go back and forth on it. I feel very happy with the size of my books. I
like the size of your books too.
Thank you.
I like the amount of time it took me to read your books. Like that, it was a pleasant read, you know?
Thank you. And that's kind of what I hope for from it. But I also love the big ones. So it's like, it's if it's good, obviously.
Totally.
Yours are good, so it helps, you know. It's like, I recently saw something from Brandon Sanderson where he was talking about how difficult it is to publish and to sell his large-scale books because it costs so much more to produce them, and you're still trying to sell them close to the same price as the other books, so you're losing out. You're doing more work and losing out on the profit in that way.
It's interesting you bring that up because I have only just started worrying about things like that, like printing costs, because all I was thinking about for the longest time was finish the two books, then I can start selling them. People will know it's a series because there's two of them out. And you know, the size of the book, I mostly was just thinking about what people are going to have to hold in their hands and whether or not they'll be too intimidated to dive into an untested author. But now that I'm finally selling them and having to worry about those things, that's the number that sticks out to me anymore, is how much it costs to print each book now, especially with what's going on economically, globally, everything. So yeah, that it is. I'm not writing for the money, and I know that's kind of a cliche to say, but I'm genuinely not. I would think the life I'm living proves that. But I now am starting to think about things like that, and so the size of the book is detrimental in that way.
I mean, it's good to be realistic and consider cost, but I think you're being true to the story itself, and that's priority number one. If your tale needs to be a certain length to be able to say your full imaginary world and give all the details that you need it to be, that's how it needs to be. You don't take away from the story you're telling to save on pages.
Yeah, I would never change it. I would never
beautiful.
change it. It's just that more of like, is this type of story like a profitable way to be writing? You know, and so far it seems less so. So yeah, it's like, it wasn't like a choice to go, oh, I'm going to go write this long book, you know, because that'll be cool. It was like, no, it just ended up being what it was. And yeah, you're right. I wouldn't change it. So
No, yeah, it's better to be true to the story, to what the concept is. And it's like at the end of the day, as an indie author, I feel like one of the ideas is that you want the story to be out there. You want people to know this thing that you are living with, that you enjoy. And if one day somebody comes along and makes a movie out of it, that's your profit right there. You know, but it's like,
Or a million books sell.
or a million books sell. It's
Whatever
like
it
a
takes.
million books. If you only make $1 off of each one, that's still $1 million. You know, but it's like, yeah, it's got to be about the story first. And I feel that I genuinely do. So as far as that goes, then like I would like to mention our third collaboration because it directly is connected to your books. We had worked on a card game that was impacted by and affected by, named after the same series of your books.
Which, by the way, guys, is like the freaking coolest thing to have experienced watching these two men go out and for hours at a time plan making a game from just thin air on the concepts only of the novels that John has written. Making a whole elaborate game with beautiful cards and strategy, and just experiencing this happening was the coolest. It was amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
well,
I mean,
likewise, it was fun.
yeah. It was really amazing to see the intricacies and the planning from an outside perspective. You know, just watching it happen. I mean, we're all gonna hear how it went, but just looking at it, I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, what are some fond memories or memories in general about that form of collaboration that you had?
That form of collaboration?
Yeah.
I mean, I have, totally fond memories of that. God, it was also during the pandemic, which was interesting, and kind of altered everything, as we all know. But yeah, getting to, you know, I remember making games was always part of the end goal with Mere Mortals, and you know, I remember we talked a bit because I just know that you love games so much, and are such a gamer and understand games.
My second book is about games.
Yeah, it's like like games are like in your blood. And then didn't we talk about doing a digital video game or something for a bit too? But like, I know that I had just always thought of making a Mere Mortals card game that played similar to the DBZ card game of the early 2000s. And then we started working on it, and then we made the whole first series, and like, yeah, honestly, since you and I last worked on it, which now is probably almost 2 years ago, I mean, I haven't touched it. You know, it's just been sitting there. I focused on finishing the second book and keeping my life somewhat together.
Which is totally fair.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, there's so much on the back burner with that. It's not like it is just sitting there, but it's not like it's just like, there were a lot of follow-up decks that we were putting together, developing concepts for the card game that are just sitting there kind of in files, like ready to go when everything else comes around, if it does come around. But for me, what was enjoyable about it was I was getting to be more immersed in your world, your book world. And I have a very specific memory from the beginning of the process where I think you had intended just to have something themed around it, but not so closely impacted by the story or the characters. And it's like, well, let's take those moments from the books and let's start like making those particularly cards, instead of just like kind of generalizing what the universe could be. Let's make it about the story, driven by the story a little bit, and see what that's like. And for me, that was a really pleasant way of approaching that. I could see the merits of the other thing, because at a certain point, if the card game really took off, you would need to separate from the main story and just play around in the universe in a different way. But that's I was just excited about, like, this is a cool story. You've done a great job with it. Let's pick those characters up and let's work with the moments that exist. Yeah.
So now this card game is incubating. It's only growing stronger, right? With the more of your story being told and better understanding of your grand story that's coming. Do you guys feel like the card game is going to be continued to be worked on, or just brought on as it is?
Yeah, I mean, I guess time will tell on that. I want to continue with all of that stuff. Like, I want to make my big dream would be to make like a Mortal Kombat style fighter for Mere Mortals eventually. That would be the coolest thing. So you know, all avenues I would love to explore at some point, but just, you know, as you probably know pretty well, I'm usually stretched pretty thin with stuff. And so it's like, the main thing was like getting the books out there first. Like having this card game, you know, basically ready to release at any time is fun.
It's a cool side thing that gives extra quality to the work that you've already been doing. It's like, while we were working on that, it drove me to start kind of thinking about like what I could do game-wise next to my concepts. And we had talked about a project that would go along with the Ancient Ones when that was releasing. And but I think we both got very busy because I mean, it really is important to focus on the writing when you're a writer, and to live your life when you're alive.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, there are more important things like.
But these things that you're doing, these tasks that you're working on, are integral to your life, because you are creative people and you have these interesting things that you want to create and put into the world. So that is part of your life and who you are and what enriches you and gives your life purpose and meaning and excitement. And I mean, going, for instance, to the game play, like the demos that you did were super cool, and seeing other people be excited for the game and learning the rules and holding the cards and just going through the movements of this game that you guys created from literally thin air, going to the printers and getting the cards created and having something tangible. I mean, that was exciting. That's something really cool that you guys worked on together. What a collaboration.
Yeah, where did we go? We went, like, if you go on the official Mere Mortals TCG Instagram, there's some history of this. You can see a bunch of the cards, and you can see we went to like Emerald Knights, right? Was one of the places. Did we?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And where else did we go?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
No idea.
We had I feel like we had three different demo days, but one of them might have been at somebody's apartment, to be honest. So it's a.
Oh yeah, we did do one test at my old apartment. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. There's history of that on the official Instagram. Yeah, that was a really fun part of it, because we were getting a different crowd than we normally would run into. We were dealing with the gaming crowd instead of avid readers. Now we've done a bunch of book signings, each of us, and we've seen who's coming through the bookstore. It's different who's coming through the game store. So here's the thing I wanted to broach, because we had discussed this before. I was under the impression that you've struggled with collaborations in the past. What has been the most harmful thing for anybody who wanted to collaborate with a writer, on a writing project, or any art project wants to collaborate? For you, what has been the most taxing thing, the thing that has been the biggest problem for you?
Well, there's lots of different kinds of collaboration. Which one are you talking about specifically?
Well, I mean, I guess back in the day you had a lot of you would work on screenplays with people, or you would do like videos with people or whatever. And
are you thinking more just in general terms?
Kind of general terms. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the specific events, scheme. But like the things that kept coming up, or that were factors that made you less inclined to collaborate.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't necessarily think of myself as less inclined to collaborate because I've done so much of it. You know, starting with the bands that I was in, you know, in middle school and high school and the years after, and all the, you know, shows that I played there. And, you know, that's one type of collaboration. And then, you know, the work that you do with people, you know, is another type of collaboration, like literally your day job. And then, you know, as far as making projects and everything, I guess one of the things that was always sort of frustrating about working in groups was just how hard it was to get schedules to line up. You know, just how slow the process is in a lot of ways, because and how much slower it gets as you get older. You know, when we were in our early 20s, it's amazing how much we were all able to get done. You know, and then as the years went on, every single year seemed to tack on, you know, exponentially more time that would have to go in between every like meeting or, you know, practice session or what have you. So just kind of the slowness of collaboration was always sort of frustrating to me because, you know, my issue has never been finding projects to work on. My issue has always been, how am I going to get to all these things before I die? You know? Yes. So,
Go.
In a lot of ways, you know, it just sort of went that way as the years went on, where, more of my time was being put towards my own projects because those were the ones getting done, you know? And so, but also speaking generally about collaboration, I do feel is slightly different than talking about our personal collaborations. And so I do feel that there should be sort of like a, you know, separation there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because, you know, there's a reason why we're still friends and everything, you know, and I do feel like our collaborations were different than other collaborations. But yes, I'd probably say that just the time, and how slow things seem to move, that would probably be.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, you gotta wait on the other when you're collaborating, and if you have the drive to knock it out, then like I had a very peculiar experience early on in my writing, when I was working with a friend of mine, and I would put something down and I'd have to wait like 2 weeks for them to send something back to me. Like we would go that way where it's like I would write a scene, they would write a scene, I would write a scene, they would write a scene, or whatever. And I would get so frustrated and antsy because like my juices are flowing, I'm ready to go, and this particular person who will remain nameless at the moment, I'll talk to them soon and hopefully that'll be a good talk, but they like I specifically remember like would just basically stop at the halfway point of their projects, and I would feel like I really was vibing this thing that I was doing, and I would try to finish it, and it doesn't have the same energy at that point if you by yourself are trying to finish a project that's not your own solely, and it loses that whatever. And I've not come back to those projects anymore after the fact, and that's why like for me it wound up driving me to more specifically focus on my own work, and I think that's been paying off because I think the books are pretty good. So but it's not I had been very excited about working with people, and I guess that's where I'm coming from with it. Is like I like collaborations, but you got to know that you can trust the person who you're collaborating with, I guess.
And it needs to be reciprocated, you know. I can remember lots of instances where, you know, it seemed like, you know, you weren't trusted in certain spaces, and it's like, well, what am I doing here then, kind of thing. You know, that's, yeah, people on the teams need to feel trusted and
valued, respected. And,
yeah.
I mean, if you're talking the time in between sessions, you guys both brought it up, is where, okay, we've got to this point and then there's a long hiatus before the next gathering, meeting, information is shared. And then I'm sure that the time spent doing the thing itself was also shortening as well. You know, okay, this first time we spent 5 hours working on this project, and then, oh, now we can only meet for 30 minutes, and everybody just say what you can really fast. And I mean, that I feel like loses its value over time, and I'm sure that's pushed you both to be more independent in your own projects. But John mentioned earlier wanting to speak specifically about the projects that you have done that I feel like have been quite successful because they have come to completion in a lot of regards. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Even in the more experimental of them, I feel like at the very least we've always reached an endpoint where we felt like we had satisfied the urge that we had going into the project in some capacity.
You always learn something. Yeah. It's always a step forward no matter what. But it's whether or not you like end up with something finished at the end.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you don't have to finish everything, and there's nothing wrong with having unfinished stuff, but like I would like to earn a couple bucks with things I've created at some point in my life. Like I don't, like trying to be humble and good about it and everything, but there's still sort of this point, where you're like, it'd be kind of cool to make a couple bucks. And I literally do mean a couple bucks. Like I've often said that, like, if I could just play music somewhere and make like $50,000 a year, I would totally do that. Like in a heartbeat.
It sounds beautiful. That's a great life.
Yeah. What else would you need? Like, that'd be great. But those jobs are like, apparently they exist, but I've never seen one.
Just letting anybody know if you need a musician for.
He's a great drummer.
Just saying.
I feel like we already broached it. My next bullet point was about silver linings. So it's just like, what's the silver lining there? I think that's part of like the conversation. Are there any?
Is it still recording?
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you say the silver lining is that even if the project doesn't come to full fruition, that you have learned and grown and developed your skill, your understanding, your personal development has benefited from a collaboration?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a finished project at the end of it, that's pretty much all you can hope for then, is that you at least learned something from it or got some new skill out of it or some new insight or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, you get to know a little bit more about yourself and how you deal with other people and how you deal with a story where it's not necessarily fully under your control, or another piece of art where it's not completely under your control. Yeah, I definitely feel like I've taken away something personally from each of my collaborations, whether it be, well, I'm not doing that again, or like 100% like I feel like a stronger person for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, would you say that there's another collaboration of the two of you in the future?
Definitely not.
Fuck no.
And on that note,
I would never say that it couldn't happen. Especially since we do have some things that are still up in the air.
Yeah. Again, like I never like. I remember I've heard a few times now from you say like I dislike collaborating, and I'm still not sure that that's necessarily accurate. Okay. Because like. I don't think I would have kept trying for all those years if I didn't like collaborating, and I don't think I would have made my primary focus for all those years movie making if I wasn't into collaborating or being in bands, because my two main things were playing in bands and trying to make movies, which are arguably the two most collaborative things you could possibly
100%
do. And I have great memories and I did all that, but eventually it did get to a point where there was other things that I was hoping to get to. Mm-hmm. And I helped lots of people with their projects, and I'm not mad that I helped them with their projects, but by helping other people with their projects, that always meant mine kind of took a bit of a back burner. Mm-hmm. And when I started into the first Mere Mortals book, and I just really fell into novel prose really comfortably, and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed that creative process, and it seemed to work with where my life was at the time. I really wanted to dive into that. Mm-hmm. And trying to focus on one thing has been a major issue with my life, because I have said yes to so much, and I am sort of spread so thin as far as like specialty. Like I don't have one, but that's just because it's not about being a this or being a that. For me, it's about the individual project itself. So it's like I don't care about being a writer, or I don't care about being I don't care about being a writer. I care about writing Mere Mortals. Or I don't care about being thought of as a musician. I care about this song getting made. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
like it's each project. So like if something were to come down the pipeline and it was designed in so and so a way, I would of course be interested. But at this point, I've just seen too many projects fall apart, and I don't even know what project there would even be at this point in my life, that, since I'm kind of out of a lot of those circles now, what it would even be. So yeah, it just everything just depends on what the specific thing and the specific moment is.
Okay.
Basically.
I mean, for me, what I've seen from you and the things that you've been putting out now, I think are very strong and are finished or are at that point where they're available to the world. And I'm very proud of you for doing it. And I think that you had a lot of successful attempts at collaborations that maybe weren't as fulfilling in the end as you would have hoped. But I think that it's clear that you've learned some things from that, and I think it's very cool that you are now doing these books.
Likewise, because we both kind of turned down that road around the same time. We were both writing screenplays a lot with people and trying to get those things going, and then we both kind of pivoted to writing more books. And I'm enjoying it still.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So.
I think you guys both made that same decision for yourself based on everything that you have taken away from collaborations that was dragging and taking forever and roadblocks and financial issues, and the fact that you can do it independently and feel your full creative force be unhindered lent itself to writing novels where it is just you and that page and the freedom to do whatever the story needed to do. I think was like a big push on why that has been your main focus.
As I don't think I've ever mentioned this to you before, and I want to say it right now because I think it's very very important in this moment. But there was we used to live together, John and I. We used to have an apartment together, and there was a moment where he had talked about how he had I don't think you'd call it a bet. I think it was an agreement that you had with another friend where you had wanted to both write a book in a year, or you had wanted to do this thing, and you said it to me, and I sat there as a screenwriter, and I was like, how am I, like, they want to both write a book at the same time, and I don't feel like that's like within like the cusp of my possible reality right now to work on a novel, and it took like half a decade after that conversation, I think. For me to like come to terms with the fact that I actually felt like I was confident enough in what I could put down with prose alone that I could write a novel. And I honestly, I don't think I would have had that conversation in my own head if it hadn't been for that conversation that you and I had in that apartment, just about you and your other friend there. It was like, oh, well.
The seed sprouted.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So I feel like we've already touched on what you're working on now, but you're working on the third Mere Mortals. You put the second one out. You just went to a really cool conference.
Yeah, I had my first convention, Fan Expo Cleveland, and it went really well, actually, because I wrote the Mere Mortals books for like fandom fans. and I've had lots of friends and family buy copies and read them, and strangers I don't know bought them and read them, but I haven't really gotten to interact with the people that I wrote it with, or excuse me, the people that I wrote it for. And so it was really great to finally get to pitch this dark fantasy series to people that like dark fantasy.
Yeah.
And
who knew the references.
And I was able to like get ideas and images and pitches into their heads a lot faster because just like shorthand, the vernacular was there where I was able to speak to them really quickly and stuff. So it went really well. I'm feeling really good, and it almost became addictive. I can't wait for the next convention. I want to just keep doing it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Wonderful news.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's next for you? You're working on, I don't know if we're allowed to say the title.
No, I'm almost there. I just got the copyright situated this morning, but book 3, cool. Odom's Library book 3 is going to be coming out later this year. I'm trying to get it out in the summer, so just a few factors are there. I'm going to need to put together some ARC readers, which is something that's been really difficult for me, is figuring out ARC readers in general. So I'm trying to see about hiring a company for this next one to get more reviews ahead of time. But yeah, not Mere Mortals. Odom,
Yes, Mere Mortals.
Yes, Mere Mortals. Mere Mortals 3 in the works. Odom's Library 3 will be out sometime this year.
And another collaboration tale involved with that one. The collaboration for the cover art.
Oh yeah, we'll talk to her. Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah. Thanks
More
for
to
being
look
on. Thanks for being on the show, John.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
It was a
done.
pleasure.
Yeah.
It was a lovely collaboration.
Yeah, there you go. And for everyone who doesn't remember, that was John Andrew Myers, author of the Mere Mortals Saga of books. You should check them out. They're on Amazon.
Yeah.
All right. Love.